Good afternoon, everybody. This is your host, Regan Gorno. Today, my guest here is Jeff Ewell. Jeff, how you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, Jeff. Um, I appreciate everything you talk about on TikTok. I like your ideas. I like the little project you're working on. Can you tell everybody and at least introduce everybody to the idea of individual rights project that you have going on?
Yeah, thank you. So, the Individual Rights Project is a brainchild of mine that has kind of been brewing for a long time. I've been passionate about the subject of liberty for many years, and you know, finally just decided that maybe I'd put together a little project to spread the word. So, I didn't really expect to be doing that on platforms like TikTok. That was all kind of new to me. Um, so that's been pretty exciting and pretty new. But yeah, that's in a nutshell. The purpose of the Individual Rights Project is very simple. It's just you know, to explain the idea that individual rights are the foundation of good society, of a moral society, and it should be the political foundation.
Now, for me, it's the wildest concept on Earth that it took us like 6,000 years to come to this conclusion.
Yeah, um, it definitely did take us. You mean as humanity,
Yeah, because
a long
the
time,
collective was the norm.
right?
You know what I mean? That the government would own the property, and as it went down from lord to earl and everything else, they would be allocated some delegation of responsibility and authority and property, maybe. But
Yeah,
the common man just
exactly.
staking out some land and saying, "I'm going to give this to my grandkids," was
Right.
a preposterous concept. You couldn't even shoot the king's deer without going to jail or dying.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you know what really changed that was enlightenment, the enlightenment and enlightenment ideas, um, and this idea that it's the individual that's sovereign. And that was a long time coming, as you said. And then politically, I think really the first place that we get that idea in a political foundation is with the founders um, of the United States of America, and in the Declaration of Independence, this idea that the entire purpose of government is to protect the individual and to protect individual rights, and that's our legacy as Americans. But things have things have gotten away from that a bit, you might say.
Yeah, and you could see a clear trend that they're trying to push back to where we started from all over again. It's like a full circle, and it's amazing. Philosophers and those that have been thinking for years, all the way back to the Greeks and stuff, even some of the Middle East, would come up with these little tidbits of ideas of the individual and the individual having the right to think for himself, and there'd be all, but it would never manifest itself in some kind of political manner until maybe the Magna Carta. I would say that's
Yeah,
probably the first time someone actually drafts up a point where the king isn't God.
right. Right.
Uh,
The
uh,
idea in the
I,
Magna Carta that the king can be bound by the law. That was at the time that idea was just crazy, and it makes perfect sense to us now. At least if you sit down and think about it for a minute. But like you said, it took a long time. We owe a great debt to men like Aristotle, who really changed the world with his ideas, especially the idea that knowledge of, you know, the objective reality of the universe is really what we should be paying attention to. Not our emotions and not mystical. mysticism. So once you get thinking along those lines, this idea that it's important to look at reality, then eventually you come to the idea that, man, the human being, has a certain objective uh, reality that animates him, and that he actually survives by the use of his mind. And in order to do that, you have to be free. This is, I think, the root that maybe most people don't realize of the idea of freedom itself, is the idea that, it's who we are. This is why the founder said that our rights were unalienable, because they're a part of who we are. They're a part of our nature.
Yeah, they can't be separated from us.
Right.
Yeah,
And
no
anytime
matter,
you try to
even
do so,
when they do, I was just going to say, even when they do, it still comes back to haunt them, and
right,
it's almost like there is a universal truth out there, and you can
right,
prove a truth.
yes, yeah, and that's the foundation that liberty rests on. The idea that it is objective, like you said, you can prove that it's true. Um, and I think we're really losing that.
Well, I think there's an intention. It's a purposeful intention to confuse us and to get us to give up a little bit.
Mm.
How many times do you have to fight a fight before you say, you know what, I'm just going to go to work. I'm not going to pay attention to that on TV anymore. I'm just not going to care anymore. Not that you get callous, not that you don't want to make a stand. It's just you've done it so many times. How many more times am I going to do it before I'm just like,
Right.
let's.
Good point.
I've only got so much time in the day, and if we're not going to fight over it, I might as well just give up.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly, the way that the founders expressed it in the Declaration of Independence is, you know, you're going to put up with things as long as you can put up with them. And that's not exactly the phraseology, but, you know, when things are sufferable, we're going to suffer them,
Yeah.
because it's difficult to make a change. It's difficult to actually move forward. It takes
Well,
a lot of effort.
it's difficult to unbelieve a lie. It's real easy to learn a lie. It's real easy to believe a lie. It's nearly impossible to unbelieve it. You almost have to have like a sentinel moment where someone brazenly corrects you with almost like physical threat or something before you can even pivot from a lie that you've ingrained into your person. And
You
I
have to be you have to be willing uh, to question your own ideas.
Yes,
Exactly.
you do have to be
And
malleable enough, and you have to be assertive enough. A lot of people don't have that assertiveness, especially like a self control in your mind. You got to blink
yeah,
for a minute and say, "Oh, I got to correct this. This is off," before your emotions just completely take control of you. And we're finding a lot of young men, a lot of people that should be far more stoic in general, being very,
hmm,
very, very led by emotion. And
yeah,
again, all of it I think is very purposeful. I don't think it's a mistake. And I wish we would put our foot in the sand and draw a line and say this is it. Because, if you look back the last 6,000 years of written history, how many people staved off like saber-toothed tigers just so we could be here? And they would kill for a paved road or kill for electricity or water that turns on hot every time. How many
right.
generations would have done anything for that?
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's kind of the point, is before you can draw that line in the sand, you really have to understand the principles that line in the sand should be based on. And as long as you know, don't know what those principles are, then it becomes really easy to just give a little here, give a little there, um, piece by piece, until it's all gone. And I think that's where we've been heading for a long time.
Oh,
I
it
want to
has been
say
a long
more
time. 'Cause,
years.
yeah, I would say I don't know how old you are. I'm 45. I don't believe I've ever had a hard time. Do you know what I mean? I've never been through a depression.
Oh,
I've never been to war. I was never in a trench until my foot almost rotted off. I've
hmm,
never. Do you know what I'm saying? I never had to fight a bear with just a knife in my hand or kill three
right.
guys with a gun. I've never been in any Alamo scenario or deadly
Yeah.
mountain circumstance where I have to cut my own arm off or I've nothing I could think of that was be so profound that it would denounce a lie. Do you know what I mean? Those sentinel moments will pivot a person who's I don't want to say sheltered, but cushy enough where you have luxury lies. For instance, a great luxury lie would be you heard a lot of people say, let's get rid of the cops. We don't need the police officers. That's a
Hmm.
luxury lie that only exists with the rich. A poor person in South Central Los Angeles does not wish to have that threat of a police officer coming if you beat me up to go away. That little old lady there in the middle of the city likes the idea of knowing that at least the threat of that phone call could deter the guy that's beating on her right now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So that luxury lie only is manageable for a rich person. And you see, there's a list of those kind of lies that are out there, and it seems like the poor will follow suit and listen to those stupid lies that they obviously don't want.
Mm. Well, it's complex. You know, your example with the police. The purpose of the police should be to protect individual rights. In order for that to happen, you have to have laws that are geared towards protecting individual rights. And that's where we started out in this country. And there are still a lot of laws that protect rights, that protect the individual, but we've gotten away from it. There are a lot of corrupt laws. Uh, there are a lot of laws that protect the state. They don't protect the individual. They're looking out for the interests of the state. And so the police force itself has become somewhat corrupted in that, it's not following completely principles that it's supposed to follow. And so, yeah, a lot of people get angry with some of the problems and they think that the solution is, well, let's get rid of the police. But that isn't really the problem. The problem is, these principles of government, of good government, that we've gotten away from. And so, you can see that ripple effect throughout society, whether it's in the police, whether it's in our money, um, any aspect of government. We've got these problems that occur because we've gotten away from true principles.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, I would go as far as to say we all have the individual duty to sustain our society with rules that do apply properly to everybody and equally to everybody, and that don't focus on protecting the state but protecting individuals. And you see, with COVID, you realize that Canada was a prime example. If you look back at how the 20th century played out for the Russians and the Germans and stuff, it was because the average citizen said, that's not my job. Or the average citizen said, that's not my responsibility. Or it's just my neighbor, it's not me. And before you know it, I'm just doing my job turns into a little piece of hell for everybody around you. And that
Yeah.
happened really fast in the 20th century on several levels in several places in the world. And it was based solely on what we saw the last couple of years go through in too many places. Canada was ridiculous to the point where truck drivers refused to do their jobs on purpose because they were the final line. The cops should have stood up. The linemen should have stood up. The road construction workers, everybody should have stood up and said, we need to draw a line in the sand. And my community where I live in Texas, they said you have to wear a mask. The governor said you had to wear a mask. And my
Right.
sheriff, the chief of police in my city, said If he wants to make a law, he can come and enforce it. I don't have time to be enforcing his laws. And that law died that day. It was probably 3 days into COVID or a week into COVID, and you could walk into Walmart without a mask on in my town.
Yeah, well, these are all good examples of, very complex issues
Yeah. So
that,
now I want everybody to know I'm not for or against COVID. I'm not for or against masks. It wasn't a matter of any of those principles at all. It was just the
right,
fact that that man had a right, a duty, and a responsibility to draw a line in the sand and say, Jeff, you are responsible for putting on a mask, and I am not going to coerce you into doing it.
right.
And
So this is,
he knew that that line mattered.
yeah, and this is the idea that, that America was based on. This idea that, you are responsible for yourself, and that the purpose of government is not to, be a parent over you. And it's not to, you know, vote so that we can decide, who gets to rule and who doesn't. The purpose of government is only to protect your rights. And other than that, you know, you're responsible for yourself. And if you violate someone else's rights, that's where government can step in. And it's a very simple idea. It's a beautiful idea. And it's the reason that America so quickly became the most prosperous, the country that everyone wanted to emulate and to go to, just because of this idea. I mean, the idea of freedom is the idea that every individual has a right to their own life. And because they have this right to their own life, they have a right, to liberty, to property. And other than that, you are responsible for yourself. And that is the simple idea that the Individual Rights Project is based on. If I can just at least get this idea front and center back in the minds of people in the culture, then I'll feel like I've accomplished something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you absolutely, man. That's one of the reasons why I caught you. And normally, if things don't go well, I won't do it a second time, or it just doesn't work
Yeah.
out. It's very difficult. But I knew that this conversation needed to happen. It's a unique, perplexing scenario that it even has to be brought up. It seems like it's so self-evident. But
Right.
the reality is they've eroded away the concept, because the coin is only shown on one side. I have rights, I have rights. But they also need to realize that there's a line also in the sand where duty becomes also an important part of the equation. You can't have rights without responsibility. And
Right. You
I'll be
cannot
honest with
have
you,
rights
I
without
think one of the reasons
responsibility.
why we're seeing kids playing video games so much and smoking weed and eating Doritos and jerking off and just giving up and playing in the garage all the time is there's no purpose. There's without purpose there's no happiness. You have to struggle against the universe is what? Basically struggle with reward. So
Yeah.
if you don't have the adventure of your life, if you're lying and being deceitful or whatever it be, you end up in a place where you just don't care anymore, and you give up everything, and then all of a sudden someone comes along and says something that's self-evident. I mean, you can observe it with your own eyes, and you can prove it with the consequences of not following these obvious realities. And
Right.
people will hit you like a wall, and before you know it, they're more worried about the brim of your hat than they are about your concepts or your conversations. And
Yeah.
Jeff, it
Yeah.
blew my mind that's so prevalent in our society now.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? And I think you're referring to the video that I made about,
I commented,
everybody.
Jeff. I commented on it because it broke me. I'm not gonna lie to you. You just kept pasting all these like comments of people more
Yeah.
worried about nonsense.
Yeah. And I
There's a,
think it's interesting. I mean, two of the things that have surprised me since I started making videos. One is, how many people I think this message has resonated with, and I've really appreciated that. And then the other one is just how many people get so angry about this simple idea that individuals have rights. And, in a lot of these videos that I make, you'll see comments like that, just people trying to tear you down in simple, meaningless ways. And for some reason, I mean, it's the hat has really. And
Jeff,
so now it's
there's a
become,
half naked cowboy singing in New York City right now, and no one cares about how little of clothes
yeah,
he's wearing. So they listen to his message, and it's all good. But your hat is breaking people.
yeah, it's very controversial. I don't know, man. People are saying they can't hear what I'm saying, just because, you know, my hat is so ridiculous, and the comments just blew me away. So I had to make a video about it. But I really think what that is just, uh, just a simple need to tear something down.
And deflection. I'm going to save a part of my piece of myself by holding on to this lie.
Yeah, it's hard to make a rational argument against something. It's really easy to just lash out and attack and try to tear it down, try to make it look silly so
And
that you
and to
don't have
think
to.
through your argument properly is
Right.
difficult in itself. If it looks like yours is wrong and you want to keep it anyways, it becomes
Yeah.
nearly impossible to have that conversation.
Right.
So how
Exactly.
frustrated does that get in like 10 seconds? If you have a rational mind that can observe the fact that I might be wrong, or at least I'm partially wrong, or my side's not 100% correct, which no side is
Right.
100% correct. I go
Yeah.
down a road. I go down a road where I start frustrating myself in like 20 seconds.
Hmm.
Fuck this dude and fuck his hat. That's it. That was it. The brain just gives up, and it's just
Yeah.
immediately, what can I pick apart so that I could just move on and keep my.
Yeah. You don't have to face your own ideas, which is difficult and painful, sometimes, like you said, if they're deep rooted. You don't have to do any of that. You can just tear down and move on. So I think that is kind of a phenomenon of social media. There's a lot of good behind social media, behind the internet in general. Just the astounding amount of information that we're able to access so rapidly. But yeah, that's definitely the downside, particularly on platforms where people feel anonymous. You know, maybe it's not even their picture up there, and it's just a username, and then nobody knows who you are. You can just tear down as much as you want, be as negative as possible without any consequences. So,
I did hear that they may be changing that. They were talking about linking your avatar slash your accounts to a phone number or your address,
mm,
which I think is completely wild.
yeah, I don't know if I'd be in favor for that. I don't know. I
Well,
think,
how many people read the terms and conditions of
yeah,
their before they say yes, I want TikTok on my phone?
I mean, you can't. They're just too long. I've tried.
Now,
Uh,
I've learned something valuable, Jeff. If
okay.
something's really complicated, like a bill that has like 900 pages in it, you
Yeah.
either don't know what you're doing or you're doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
the entire government that changed the world in the last 300 years was written on one piece of paper.
yeah. I mean,
Do you
it's
think
written
that's a
to protect
mistake?
them.
That something that profound was written on one piece of paper, and that we can make something so complicated that you refuse to read it? Do you think either one of those things is a mistake?
I think simplicity is definitely not a mistake. Are you saying you're saying they did it on purpose?
Oh, of course
Yeah.
they did.
Yeah.
Oh,
Making
number
it
one, the
complex.
people that are paying to do it know they're doing
Yeah.
it wrong. And the people that are passing it don't have a clue what they're passing unless they get the gist of what's going to benefit them. Because if you
Yeah.
think 900 pages applies to any one person, you're kidding yourself unless it's the Bible.
Right.
And even
Yeah, that is
then,
the idea.
do you know what I mean? It's so obvious. It's
They
so
know no one's
obvious.
going to take the time to read it. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I mean, you want TikTok and you want the value that it provides, and you don't want to read 10 pages. So you click yes.
And I think we've gotten to the point where they put us in a position where if the second sentence said, we have the right to take your child into slavery, you'd still click it anyways. The vast majority of people will click it anyways.
Yeah,
So
I
they
think
don't
they
even
have
have
a
to
problem
bury.
with
They don't.
clickbait.
They've caused us to be so complacent that they don't even have to bury the reality of it anymore.
Yeah, true.
I really. It seems to me like they don't. They can be that brazen. It seems like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I think they'd have trouble slipping that one in there, but
But how many
but I
people would
think
still say yes anyways?
but I think you're right. Yeah.
I bet you it's at
I'd
least a
probably do the same.
percentage.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, social media, it's all still very new. Like you said, you're an old timer like me. I think I got a couple years on you, but it's not something that we grew up with. And now, boom, it exploded, and it's just a part of the world that it's hard to get away from, or that you don't want to get away from because of the value there. And that's me. I find a lot of value in it, um, for the purpose of being able to spread ideas, but also to be able to network with people and to, uh, you know, there's a lot of tremendously good ideas out there with the bad ideas. And so it's a huge opportunity, just to have all that knowledge and information.
Oh yeah, I think not taking an opportunity is a mistake in and of itself.
Yeah.
But we don't even see the full ramifications of the technology, and it's already expanding so fast. Things are moving
Right.
so quickly. AI, pretty soon, not only will you believe a luxury lie, but you won't even be able to trust your own eyes when you see a picture. Have you seen some of the stuff they can do with
Isn't
like?
that incredible?
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible, and it's just a baby. If you think
Yeah.
they perfected the car, they're gonna perfect this technology 100-fold to the point where you won't know who was standing behind Hitler in any given picture and truly believe it. So what happens
Yeah.
to reality when you cannot believe the past? Truly believe the past.
Well, that's an interesting point, and I know there's a lot of people afraid of this new technology. I'm not one of them. I'm a believer in the principle that technology is always a good thing, but we can use it either positively or negatively. Um, and I think, AI is no different. I don't think there's going to be a crisis in AI, to the tune of things like the Terminator and
Nah,
AI
I
taking over
agree.
the
I agree
world.
with you 100%. I don't think it's even come close to that. My concern would be who would be in charge of the robots would be my biggest concern. Because it only takes
Right.
one knucklehead, and now instead of the chief of police saying, I'm not going to enforce that law because morally I'm against it, robots don't do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it
there's
really
an element of
does.
that bothers me. It's who's in charge.
Right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you know, no one should be in charge, so to speak. Ultimately, laws should be designed to protect individual rights, and nobody really should rule over us. And I think that is that idea is fading fast. I think a lot of people in this day and age are somewhat skeptical of liberty. They're skeptical of capitalism. They're afraid of the idea of personal responsibility, and that scares me way more than artificial intelligence. It's the someone said, what is it? The lack of intelligence scares me more than artificial intelligence.
Oh,
Um,
without a doubt, Jeff. To be honest with you, we are the one that holds the key to everything. And those that are going to be in charge, whether you like it or not, there's going to be someone on top. There's always someone on top. They're going to have moral choices, and I hope we bred enough moral people to make the critical choices that are coming really fast. Because if we think things are tough now, it could get way tougher if we go in a certain direction really, really fast. I mean, it
yeah,
could escalate overnight. I mean, how long did it take eggs to go from, in my town, it went from 75 cents a carton to I think 5.25. I think it took 2 months.
yeah, well,
I think it
that's
can.
crazy.
I think it can happen in like 2 days.
Yeah,
That all can escalate in 2 days.
things can happen so fast.
Yeah,
You're right.
and then you're stuck there for a while. I mean, you're
Yeah,
stuck because I'll be honest with you, if gas was ceased to, it's crazy how things can move and how fast things can change. But I think your project isn't sexy. I think they're like, for instance, the Libertarian Party or the Republican Party in certain aspects. There's nothing sexy about this bill. There's nothing popular about this. There's got to be a way to apply this obvious need in a way that makes it doable. I've noticed recently a huge trend where traditional values are becoming like the alternative. So some of the cool kids that used to skateboard will now be like a trad this or a trad that. And out of nowhere, you got these girls that want to stay home and cook and dress like Betty Crocker and all this crazy. And it's almost like an alternative lifestyle to actually go back to the way it used to be. And I think there's a way to make the message sexy, to make the idea and all this stuff. And I think it's with money.
Are you talking about my hats again? That joke. Yeah.
No, that's a great joke, man. That's a great turnaround. That's great.
Yeah, as far as, I don't know, making the message sexy, I think really the most important question is it true? And I think the truth really does resonate with people. And it takes some effort. And the most important part about this message is the idea that your life belongs to you. And I don't know, in my mind, nothing is more important, more sexy to use your term, than the recognition that you own your own life. And, no one should be able to control you, to own you. I mean, if you watch pretty much any movie out there that's exciting, that's the message. I don't care if you're watching something in the fantasy genre or even something that talks about history. Any type of story is about someone, about their decisions, about their life. And I think we don't realize that when we're giving all of this power to government, it's hard to get that back.
I think it's almost nearly impossible to get back.
Yeah, and somehow we've lost this idea, like you said, of personal responsibility. We think we can have it both ways. We think we can have a mom and pop government taking care of us and still be able to make all of our own decisions. And it's just not correct.
I want to grab 2 points there because I've been thinking about it for a while you're talking, and they're pretty profound. With the sexy thing, I think if you could say, I need 1 million men to follow me. I need to do that tomorrow, and I can't force them. If you were a millionaire and you said, I can make 1 million people a millionaire tomorrow, how many people would follow Elon Musk?
Yeah.
That's sexy. I want that power. I want that drive. I want that opportunity. And I believe that's possible for anybody in the modern world, in America. Even though we're losing our rights and our freedoms, the ability to grow and expand and take care of yourself has never been easier. We're not fighting off saber-toothed tigers. We're not plowing out a road in the backyard because there's no such thing as a road at all.
Right.
Everything's pretty much laid out for us to just have an easy life. And then there's a second part. I'm a huge proponent that if I'm going to have a conversation about the government does too much or the politicians are all corrupt or whatever, and then you leave your neighbor's house and you don't really solve the problem. It was just an argument, right?
Right.
Or back when I was a kid, you smoke weed and everybody's like, man, the government doesn't let us smoke weed because blah, blah. And you don't really solve the problem. You don't like follow through on the argument and try to fix it and try to find the solution. It's just let's pepper out the reality, the truth, whatever it be, and everybody gets a little bit excited, and then the excitement just kind of like fizzles out and dies. Mm-hmm. So my thought was, because I've been thinking about this for a while, I don't want to see this all fall apart. I go to the grocery store, I stand there for a minute, and I see these overweight people or someone in a one of those driving car, like little grocery cart things. And I
Oh, yeah.
see these elderly people that can hardly take care of themselves. And I'm like, what would happen if all this fell apart?
Mm.
What would happen to my kids? My son's 7 years old. What would happen if everything fell apart? Could I take 6 kids somewhere safe?
Mm.
Could half these people take care of themselves? Is it worth me just selling everything I have, take all the equity out of my house, and just run away? Should I go to
Yeah.
Costa Rica and just give up? Or is it time to stand and fight? And if you're going to stand and fight, do you have a solution? So I've been thinking about it. If you tell people, oh, you got to work really hard, and the young men are the key to all this, right? Yeah. So who fights in a war? Young men. Who keeps the
Right.
power lines working? Young men. There ain't 75-year-old dudes on top of telephone poles or underneath your car or in the sewers. It's young men. And the young men hold the key to everything, and they're the ones deteriorating the fastest, right? So I'm like, how do I make it sexy for you to want to keep the electricity running so I can live my life as well as I do? How can I make it sexy so young men try to strive for more than just playing video games, jerking off, and eating Doritos in their mom's basement? How do I make it sexy enough for you to do something different? And the conclusion I came to is something I fell on by accident when I was in my early 20s. When I was in my early 20s, I lived in a mansion with like 7 people. That day, I had an opportunity to become a millionaire, and I chose not to. I chased women and just did dumb stuff, but I had tons of money in my pocket. I was in my early 20s, I had a nice truck, and I was renting a room with a bunch of dudes, and everybody had money. And we squandered the opportunity. What if I would have been 22 years old, I would have got 2 full-time jobs, grinded, stay away from the women for a little while, and had a purpose to put money away so that I could buy a house cash or put a lot of money away in the stock market and get some dividends out of it every month. You know what I mean? Because it isn't that hard to do in your early 20s. Because I'll be honest with you, I worked 18 hours in construction. It's doable. It's not impossible. So what if 5 guys rented a house and all 5 dudes had one purpose? I remember when I was a kid, there were Chinese people down the street living in an apartment, a 3-bedroom apartment. It was like 3 generations. There was like 18 people in that house. We were laughing at them at how stupid it was. But guess what? They owned their business outright after a couple years. And I think they bought a house and they all left. So being a collective group like that and working together as a small team allowed them to network, and allowed them to save, and allowed 12 or 15 adults to all pull their money together for the greater good. What would it look like if 5 men all worked 2 jobs each, and the goal was to pay off a house or to start their own business or do something like you see the Chinese and the Indians doing just a couple of generations ago? How fast can you make a millionaire? If one guy succeeds at starting his own business because they all work together, you got a plumber, electrician, a mason, and a couple other guys that do like odds and ends stuff, whatever it be, all working together, all connected, all trying to work to make things better for themselves. How much faster? How many, 5 years? One of them could be a millionaire? Maybe in 5 years they can all buy a house. If they all had that purpose, instead of just playing video games and waiting for the next Call of Duty to come out, they actually stood their ground and said, I'm going to make this world a little bit better. That could be kind of sexy. You could actually make, and I was thinking about how many dudes out there in their mid to early 20s have kid payments. They're making payments to a kid. They're probably not going to really be able to influence a whole lot. They're struggling, and they just give up. They say, screw it. Half my paycheck's going to a kid I'm not going to hang out with very often. This woman's a complete nightmare. What if he could be a millionaire, or what if he could have an Aston Martin in the parking lot? How many years would it take 5 guys with 2 jobs to get an Aston Martin in the front yard? Or a Corvette at least. How long would it take? So if you add the idea of individual freedom, individual rights, you add the idea of being your own man, and showing them that there's an avenue where you could be more than a guy that just makes $20 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because if you don't have a true solution for a young man to get out there and actually hustle, it just it peters out. So even the ones that agree with you, that aren't going to dog you for your concepts, the euphoria of that message kind of dies down, and then you go back to playing video games again, or go back to not caring what's happening in politics, or you go back to just the daily grind. But if there was something tangible for a young man to do, like this one example I have, there's other examples I guess you can come up with, but something that's tangible that can make someone actually propel themselves.
It's quite an idea.
Right? I mean, wouldn't that be, could you imagine being able to create 1 millionaire with your idea? If you tried this 10 times, it failed 9 times, but one house, one guy, it actually worked. How many people would we save in that grocery store? Could we kick this can down the road for one more generation? Do you know what I'm saying? We affect each other way more than we realize, and we're way more connected than we realize. And social media has exponentially affected that to a reality that we're not living in a vacuum.
Yeah. Well, I know ideas are powerful, and I think there's something to be said for what you're saying, which is, networking with like-minded people, and whether it's for the purpose of making $1 million or, for the purpose of changing the world, that's very, very powerful. And I think you're right that that's the way that change is affected.
I think they're the same too. I think they're the same. Getting wealth creates power. You ain't saving the rainforest if you make $18 an hour.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? You're not gonna, and you gotta. The only way we're gonna get young men to really take good ideas seriously is if the outcome proves it's a good idea.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? So if we could put a mechanism in place where they have the potential to network more than they would if they stayed home in their mom's house, if they had the potential to make more money than they would if they just stayed at their mom's house and did 2 jobs and did nothing with their, do you know what I mean? Because when you have another guy next to you that's working out, are you going to be a bitch and not work out, or are you going to work out with the guy next to you? He does 100 push-ups. I'm doing 100 push-ups because you ain't making me look like a chump. So if you got 5 guys motivated, they're going to perpetually make each other always better. Now, what does the Bible say? Iron sharpens iron. 5 like men that actually are acting on that belief, because a belief is meaningless without action. Actually, right. I say it's worse than meaningless. I would say it's void of the reality necessary.
So when are you starting this school?
I already did. I already tried to work this out. I'll be honest with you. Finding young men, specifically young men with kids living at home because they can't pay for their own shit because they got too much kid payments, is nearly impossible to find individually. 2, finding a bunch of young men that will actually work together I've been found to be almost daunting. And then I realized there's way more need than I could ever imagine. There's veterans that are homeless. There's women that need to. So I was trying to get a house together, and it kind of fell apart like last week. Oh, yeah, no. I'm not going to just say I'm going to do this. I'm not going to say I fucking tried to do it. I really tried to do it last week.
So serious about it.
Oh, yeah. So I go about 10 days ago, I go with the real estate agent that sold me my house and go look at 3 3-bedroom houses to rent for the sole purpose of seeing if I can get 5 people in that house. Got to 4 people. When it came to the minute where I said, okay, everybody needs to pony up some money because I'm not dropping 10 grand myself for everything to go through, it all fell apart. But that doesn't mean I'm done. I'm getting like 10 referrals every day for people that want a place. But getting 5 people, and I told all these people, I went to Starbucks and I told them what my plan was. I said, I want to make the world a better place, and I want everybody to work together to network. I want everybody, and it sounded good when they looked me in the eyes. But once it became like a week later and I actually did what I had to with the real estate agent, it kind of dwindles pretty quickly. So there's got to be action with ideas, and you can't wait too long, because I'll do it later becomes I'll do it not at all.
Yeah, that's true.
And all it was the time it took for me to get 4 people, which I think took me like 5 days. Then 4 people to talking to the real estate agent, and then the real estate agent telling me how much I need down to make this all happen, it all fell apart.
Hmm.
So I don't know. That doesn't mean I'm a firm believer that if I failed, it's just because I haven't found the right way to make it work yet.
That's
So
true.
I'm still negotiating, and I think I still have one couple that's still into it, and one girl that might be. But there's so much need for drug rehab people that need a place to stay. There's homeless vets. There's single dads. There's so much need out there that there wouldn't be enough houses to
Yeah.
solve the problem. And I don't know what rent is around where you're at, but we're looking at $1,800 a month
Right. It's gotten crazy.
just to walk in the door in a regular house. And this is not a great house; it's just a regular house. So a lot of people don't qualify. Like they're not married, so they can't use their joint income together properly, or they fail the background test because they did make some mistakes in the past. You'd be shocked at how many people live at
Yeah.
their aunt's house.
No, I think you're right. And that's a huge idea. And I don't know about all of that. I wish you the best of luck with all of that, but I can say that the most important factor in any of that, I think, are the principles, at the base of what you're trying to accomplish. It's like anything else. If you get clear on the principles of your movement, then you're going to see success. If those principles are correct and you can correctly identify what those principles are, it's no different for a country than for a small group or for a family. The same principles apply because, like we said before, we're living in an objective reality. Things are what they are, and principles are just a way of understanding what that is and what you need to do to get from A to B.
Yeah.
So
How
I
many
don't know
men walked?
about
How many men walked in snow to let their feet bleed, to sleep in a tent? Valley Forge was a wild story. These
mhm.
guys did everything for that purpose. They wanted to see where this can go,
Yeah, and
and for us to get,
militarily they
and
should have
for
lost,
yeah, well,
right?
I know that,
But
but my point is though, for us to give this all up at this point sounds preposterous. It sounds insane to me. I think that we could get little
yeah,
pockets of people to go back to a traditional idea of men making more money and not being suppressed into the point where they just give up on their own lives and just succumb to video games, like I said, or porn. You see young men get to porn; they can't even have relationships with young ladies. And I'll be honest with
yeah,
you, I'm a great motivator because one of the people I sat down with at Starbucks, I was like, if you change your mindset a little bit, you'd be amazed at how much you can change the way you carry on your daily grind. So I told the young lady, I'm like, I fill my gas tank, and when it gets to 3/4 tank, I fill it again. Now it costs me the same amount as if I was on E and I put $30 in, and then wait until it gets to E again. But the mindset is tomorrow I'm not worried about gas.
right.
I'm worried about all kinds of other things, but I'm not worried about that. And you've got to do that with so many things in your life. And she told me the next day, she messaged me. She texted me, I filled my gas tank. I've been on E for 2 years. I filled my gas tank. But again, it trickled down and it kind of diminished as the days went on. If I didn't get that house, and I don't know if they had the money up front, I don't know. And I don't know if I would have had the resources. I can't justify taking a huge risk and have
Yeah,
nobody in that house a week later. Do you know what I'm
right.
saying? You start a business, you're supposed to do it out of your garage. You start a t-shirt business, you're supposed to not put any money up. You make a website, you say, this is what my t-shirt looks like, how many people want to buy it? You get 100 orders, you go buy the machine to make the 100 orders. Because now
Right.
money's coming in, right? And you do it
Yeah.
out of the garage until you can afford that building. Now, if you go buy that building, you go buy a million t-shirts, and you go get it all set up, and you spend all this money, and you haven't sold a t-shirt yet, you don't own a business, you own a lot of debt.
Yeah.
I wanted to play it backwards. I wanted to get everybody ready and then make the house available once everybody was in line. So that way there was no risk on my end. But I don't know if it's hard to play that game. It wasn't as easy as I thought.
Yeah. No, business is complex, and I think you have the right mindset as far as, how to build one, rather than just having an expensive hobby.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you get business cards and look like you got a business, but that doesn't
Are
mean you
you
do.
are you approaching it like a business? Are
Oh
you
yeah, no, no,
looking
no. I
to?
was gonna make a profit. My goal was to get
Mhm.
them right so that they can get ahead, and then hopefully it would be the five plus me, and we would work it out where we'd pay off the house, and we'd have like a house car. Like if we did buy a
Yeah.
Corvette, it would be the house car. So when you go pick up your kid, you could go in the Corvette, and this girl's like, "This dude gives me $600 a month, and he's driving a Corvette. How the hell did he do that? I know he works two jobs. Do you know what I mean? And
Right.
maybe I could fix that family. I'm not saying that Corvette will fix the family, but my thought is the worst case scenario is you make her think twice, and he can move on with his life.
Hmm.
And there's all
Interesting.
kinds of avenues in which way that can work. But there's got to be a way to connect with young men. There's got to be a million young men out there that would rather not play video games and jerk off. There's got to be. How do you find them?
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know about all of that, but like I said, I think the most important factor is the power of ideas. And if your ideas are correct, if your ideas are sound, then people will find you. I mean, people are looking for the truth because the truth is effective. It's helpful in your life. It changes your life. People want to be happy, and it's just a question of, and not everyone is searching, but you'll find those people who are, and that is, I think, the most important focus for anything that you're trying to do is drilling down to the heart of the ideas. You know, ideas change the world for good or for bad. The Like we said before, the ideas of the Enlightenment were really what led to the Declaration of Independence, and the ideas of Karl Marx, Frederick Engels, are what have been eroding away at the ideas of the Declaration of Independence. So ultimately, you know, um, it's not the environment people are raised in. I don't believe. I mean, obviously that can be a factor. It's not any form of deterministic outcome. I think ultimately it's the ideas that people embrace that really change their life and change the world.
It does,
So,
and one person can change the world, absolutely, without a doubt. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of like it when someone comes from nothing. When you hear of what was it, Ben Carson? Was it Ben Carson there? He was Chicago, right? Became the best brain surgeon on the planet, I think.
all right. Yeah.
Right, that guy. Yeah. So this guy was a nobody in Chicago, single mom. She couldn't even read or write. Forced him to go to
Hmm.
school. Becomes the brain surgeon that separates those Siamese twins years later.
Yeah. I
And
mean, it's a great example.
those are
Why do
great
people?
stories. Those are amazing stories. And I think your environment actually helps you get
Yeah.
past the BS. So I
Yeah.
think the harder it is, the better it is. To be honest with you.
Oh, you're saying the harder the better. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, I guess my point would be it can help you. It can hinder you, but ultimately it's a question of which ideas do you hold to. I mean, if you live in poverty and you come from nothing and you believe that because of that you have no shot, it's the idea, I think, that's harming you more than the poverty. And that's a controversial stance for me to take in this day
No,
and
no,
age.
I agree with you 100%, man. Victims cannot succeed.
Yeah. I mean, I was watching a video on social media the other day, and this guy was playing the drums, and he was playing Rush, Tom Sawyer. You familiar?
Oh yeah,
It's a very
yeah.
difficult difficult piece to play on the drums. The only thing is these drums were like all homemade. You know, they were made out of tin cans, and the cymbals looked like they'd been cut out of just out of sheet metal.
Love it. I
And
absolutely love it.
yeah, and I mean, it's uh it's it's a testament to not only determination but correct ideas,
Well, yeah, they
believing.
also say that the greatest artists or the greatest minds, they're able to create better with less.
Hmm. Yeah,
You
I
have
mean,
this unlimited income and stuff. It seems like it hinders the creativity.
mm,
There's something.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you're well to do and you also believe you can accomplish, there's nothing wrong with that either. I mean, that's
I think it's though the principle that it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get to heaven. And just if you got too
yeah,
much money, it almost clouds your judgment sometimes once you get there. It's the climb to getting to being a millionaire that's the
yeah.
adventure. And for instance, how many kids? I think America has never had like a third generation millionaire. I think there's very few. I think the Henry Ford is an exception to the rule. Most of the time, the Hiltons will make a billion, and the daughter will squander it, and the third generation it's gone. And we just
Mm,
recycle millionaires constantly.
I had no idea. I'm
No,
gonna have to
yeah,
research that.
don't get me wrong. There's outliers. Like I said, I think Henry Ford's family is one of them. But Oprah
Uh-huh.
Winfrey didn't come from money, and Bill Gates didn't come from money. Not saying that his family wasn't well off, but I mean Bill Gates is at a different level than his parents were, and
Yeah.
Elon Musk and all these other guys. We recycle millionaires constantly.
No, that's fascinating. Yeah, I definitely believe that it's, obviously I'm an individualist. I believe that it really comes down to um, what ideas you hold to and what, you set out to accomplish. I'm not one of these guys that believes it's all about where you came from and and I debate with people all the time, especially online, people who have this kind of Marxist idea that where you come from is the most important factor. And they talk all the time about this Marxist idea that um, the means of production are really out of reach for most people. And these guys are, living in the United States. And I say, if you want to own the means of production, why don't you start a business? And they're constantly negative towards that. Look, not everyone can start a
Well,
business.
it's a daunting task to do it alone. And if you got the motivation to start, seeing it all the way through is almost impossible by yourself. Not saying you
But
can't do it. People have done it.
starting a business.
But I'm just
Yeah.
saying anything in general. You get motivated, you get excited, but when you're completely alone, everything starts dwindling down. Everything gets a little bit harder, and before you know it, giving up and going back to the video games becomes a far easier task. It's that slave mentality. It's like, I
Yeah.
could go into the desert. I don't know what's in the desert. I know I'm going to get bit by snakes, and I have no idea where my next meal is. But if I go back to the video games, I know where the food is, and there's no more snakes. I'm
Yeah.
dead serious. The analogy sounds stupid or weak or simplistic, but the
No, I
reality
believe it.
is that people are looking at it, and I think the solution to some of that problem is why they give up and they say communism is the better alternative. Is they're not with like-minded people that are motivated to keep on going and don't give up. And there's another factor too that has to be taken into consideration. Mind and body are equal. If your body's shit, your mind's shit. So if you
Mhm.
don't have the self-control to not eat too much, if you don't have the self-control to not work out, you are not going to have the self-control to go all the way through what it takes to start a business.
Yeah.
Your mind and body have to be in sync.
Yeah.
So a
Are
300
you,
pound man, the probability of a 300-pound man at 25 years old becoming a millionaire is probably pretty slim. The odds of him going back to video games is probably a 99%. But if he is able to lose some weight and show some self control, and then put it in an environment where there's four other guys that want to actually do it, I think the odds of success go up exponentially.
okay. What if he does it on his own? You don't think that's possible?
I
Or
think
you
it's
think,
possible. I think it's possible. But how often is that the norm?
yeah, well, I think it's becoming less and less the norm, especially the more that we believe that these kinds of things are impossible, number one. And number two, uh, the more and more difficult it becomes to do things like start a business. There's so much regulation. I don't know if you've started any businesses, large or small.
Yeah.
I've started a few,
Yeah.
and I can tell you, it can be very expensive depending on where you live as well. I mean, I started a bakery in Utah, in southern Utah, which is a smaller, town, and it was a lot less expensive, less hoops to jump through. Granted, still too many, in my opinion. I'm a free market guy. But then when I tried to do the same business in Las Vegas, in Nevada, they're trying to act like California and adopt all of those regulations. And that was prohibitively expensive. I mean, I paid as much just for regulation, all of the stuff that they make you do, the plans that they make you have for building. If you go through and add it all up, I paid as much just for the regulation as I paid, to create an entire bakery business in Utah.
Yeah, and I
So
don't think that's an accident either. I don't think that's an accident.
no, it's definitely not an accident. The government, just the size and scope of government is growing exponentially every year. And the only place that money can come from is from the free market, because government itself doesn't create anything.
No,
It doesn't
no, they can
make
print more, but
anything.
that's literally just diluting it altogether. And I have noticed when they make a regulation on banks and they say, "Oh, we're gonna regulate the big banks because they're too big to fail or whatever," blah 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 blah, and they say they're gonna do something in the banking industry, and especially if it says that they're gonna do something that's gonna hurt the big banks or they're gonna tighten up the big banks or anything, immediately, normally that means the big banks are going to go up in value and the small banks are going to shrink immediately because the regulation will be designed to destroy the smaller banks or to make new banks and new competition impossible.
Right.
So every time I hear something about a regulation in any industry, I normally put the money in the biggest company I can.
Mm,
It almost has never failed.
that's a hot tip. Yeah.
Now, that's very simple. So if they
But
say, "Oh, we're going to
principle
regulate
is
the
sound.
housing industry," find the largest builder in America and put a couple bucks in that. I guarantee it'll go up. If they say they're
It's
going to
a hot
suppress the
tip. And
builder, they're going to suppress all the little guys. Anytime they
yeah.
regulate a big industry, normally the big guys benefit. Because who do you think wrote that law? The big
Right.
guys,
Right.
right? Yeah, they. So you think they're going to write a law that's going to make them hurt? They're going to call it
No.
regulation on the big guy, and it's literally going to stifle the little guy, immediately going to raise the value of the bigger stock. So if they say they're
Yeah.
going to regulate the bank, I'm putting a G on Bank of America immediately. They say they're going to regulate. No, I'm dead serious. I don't think it's ever
No, I,
failed.
I know you are.
Uh,
It's a hot tip, but it's also a sad commentary, which is why I laugh. I mean, you got to laugh to keep from crying sometimes, but I laugh because it's so true.
well, here's the deal.
It's
If you got sun on your back, rain coming down, and soil in front of you, are you going to plant or complain?
I mean, it depends on who you are.
Well, my point is, if the banks are going to make $5, I might as well make a nickel.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm
I
saying?
mean,
It's not like I can
you
take
you
my
might as well
gun and
take
walk over to
advantage.
Bank of America and stop it.
No, you're smart. You're smart. I agree. I mean, the same is true with laws. Any law that they write, uh, whatever they call it, you can be sure that it's designed to do the opposite. What was the
Almost every
most
time,
recent
man. Yeah, if you
example?
could actually read through that 9,000 page nonsense and find something that's concrete, do the opposite or expect the opposite or whatever.
Right. And generally speaking, it's because, government um, meddling in the free market is always a disaster. People see government as, a necessary evil that if we didn't have it, things would just run amok. But the reality is, the principle of government. I mean, if you look at what government actually is, it's force. And anytime you try to use force to solve a problem, you actually end up creating more problems. And most of us have learned this in our everyday life. Most of us aren't um, trying to get ahead by stealing or by forcing people to do what we want. But then we turn around, you know, when it comes to government and put our confidence in that type of force. And so it's always a disaster. That's one of the most important principles, I think, that we kind of lost sight of, this idea that force is only good for defense. And so government is only good for defense. It's only good for defensive rights.
You said it before. I've seen it in one of your TikToks where you said that monopolies only exist because the government makes the environment in which it can actually grow and fester. In
Yeah,
and
that's
of
a perfect
itself,
example.
no matter how good Walmart gets, if their fruit starts getting bad because they have no competition, if their labor gets lazy,
Hmm.
someone will swoop in and fill the void somewhere in there, and Walmart will no longer be. And that was one of the great things about depressions. Was Great Depressions forced all the companies to get through a literacy test to see if all your ideas were good enough and if anybody else had a better idea. And the good ideas survived and the bad ideas died. And I'll be honest with you, it also allowed everybody to be a little more rugged. My grandfather was far more rugged, knowing that there was a chance that this was going to happen again. Unbent the nail, made sure he paid cash for his cars. And those things mattered a lot in that generation. And they trickled over to a far better, I think we had a better society knowing that every 20 or 30 years everything was going to fall apart. And I think we made a mistake getting rid of those depressions. I think they were a
I
blessing.
don't, I don't know. I might have to disagree with you there a little bit. Number one, I don't think we've gotten rid of them like we think we have. And as you said before, with our sound money problem, what they've been trying to do is substitute, the boom and bust for sound money, and eventually that's going to have huge consequences. But it's the government itself that causes the boom and the bust cycles. We didn't have this sort of thing before government got involved and tried to prevent it. So the I agree with you on principle, though, that the normal difficulty of life is something that creates, I mean, that is the free environment that we are subject to. And you can't really change it by creating a government to try to shield you from it. And so, I agree with you there. Being Having the opportunity to deal with life ruggedly is something that I think is completely necessary, and I think that's your right. You know, you don't. What's a good way to say that? You don't. You actually have the right to deal one on one with life. No one has the right to shield you from reality. And I think a lot of people out there might think that's a harsh statement and think, reality's harsh. We need someone to shield us from reality. I don't. I don't
Would you
want that
rather be
kind of
blind
thought.
to reality, or would you rather be strong enough to deal with it? Those are
Exactly.
the true questions you have to ask yourself. Because if your mom said you don't have to go to school today, it looks like you're tired, you still have to make that choice to say, screw it,
Yeah,
I'll stay home today. I'm
that's
not.
a better way to say
Do
it.
you know what I'm saying? Just because someone offers you food stamps doesn't mean you have to take them.
Right. Yeah, that's a better way to say it.
Yeah, because the reality is depressions were actually a byproduct of the free market. As the car companies made 500 cars one year, the next year they made 600 cars. The next year they built another plant, hired more people, and they made 1,000 cars. And then you got to the point where no one needed a car anymore, and the whole thing would collapse. And that would happen generally with the entire economy. McDonald's would build more McDonald's, Burger King would build more Burger Kings, and then you'd get to the point where there was no need for any more, and you couldn't grow your stock, and everything would suppress. And then it would all go down, and the guy with the good idea would survive, and the guy with the bad idea would collapse, and Burger King would be the only thing left. and we'd constantly recycle millionaires. We'd constantly recycle ideas until the best one came up. And those ups and downs had a benefit to the free market. They had a benefit to how to mass produce things. And they had a benefit to the guys next door that said, you know what? I saw what he did. He paid cash for his vehicle, and that worked out really well for him when he was hard up for money. I'm going to do the same thing. And standing in a bread line, it's humiliating. But being humble sometimes is the best place to be when you need to get to grow. I don't see any negatives to the way it used to be 100 years ago. And I think we had, 4 or 5 depressions. One of them led to the greatest. We consumed more alcohol than any other nation per capita in the 1800s. And that was a depression, alcoholism, and then we had the temperance movement, and they outlawed alcohol. And then we had another depression, and it all came back again. But we had 5, I think it was 4 or 5 major depressions in the last 250 years. We just started trying to solve them, which I think was a huge mistake. Like you said, number one, we manipulate the money, so that's a problem all by itself.
Yeah, I think we might disagree a little bit on the workings of the free market there, but I think we agree, on the deeper principle where it counts, as far as freedom is concerned and the importance of dealing with reality. So
awesome. Yeah, I agree with you, and I appreciate it because we're running out of time.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go get my daughter, so we're going to have to call it a day, man. Jeff, you are a profound thinker. You have great insight. You obviously are well-read, and you take your responsibility very seriously that you have something to give and you want to give it back, and I appreciate that, Jeff.
Thank you. I appreciate all those compliments. As I said, the most important thing to me as far as the Individual Rights Project is just being able to share those ideas, get them out there, and I do it because I love it, and I hope people find value in it. And I really think that getting back to, the principles of individual rights would change this country. And I think the most of the problems that we have can actually be solved through freedom. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, Jeff. And I want to see it fixed too, man. Every time I go in a grocery store, I take 10 seconds to just look around and see who is in the demographic that would suffer. And I don't want to see anybody suffer. I want this to work. I think we have a good life. I think everything is malleable enough to be fixable.
I hope you're right.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
Jeff, I hope you have a great day, man. Enjoy the TikToks, and I'll definitely be watching you, man. I love your commentary.
Sounds great. We'll catch up to you later.
And I'll let you know when I publish this.
Okay, perfect.
All right, man. Appreciate you. You have a good day.
Yeah, you too.